My blood ran cold. Kevin looked at me in alarm. Roger Cooper wasn't just trying to manipulate us again. He was threatening to report Dad to the IRS. And if that happened, it could trigger a full audit. One that could freeze our family assets, including the mining deal. What kind of decisions? I asked carefully. The mineral lease income, for starters, Cooper replied smoothly. Your father used some very creative accounting methods to minimize tax liability. He paused before continuing. Then, there's the matter of several construction contracts that were completed with, shall we say, flexible adherence to building codes. Kevin grabbed my arm and shook his head violently. These were obvious lies designed to scare me into cooperating. Mr. Cooper, I said calmly, if you had evidence of actual wrongdoing, you would have used it years ago instead of stealing money from my father's business. There was a sharp silence on the line. Then Cooper's voice turned cold. Who says I stole anything? Your father's accusations were never proven in court. They were simply the paranoid delusions of a sick man who couldn't handle having a younger, more innovative partner. The sheer audacity of his lies was breathtaking. I took a slow breath. I'll tell you what, I said. Why don't you come by the house this afternoon? We can discuss this face to face. Kevin's head snapped toward me. Rachel, no, he whispered urgently, but Cooper sounded pleased. Excellent, he said. I'll be there at 2 o'clock. And Miss Ellison, I hope you'll be more reasonable in person than you're being on the phone. The line went dead. Kevin stared at me like I'd completely lost my mind. Rachel, you can't let him come here, he said. He's dangerous, and he's desperate. People do stupid things when they're desperate, I replied, which is exactly why we're going to handle this carefully. I pulled out my phone and dialed Mr. Norman. We're not meeting Cooper alone. An hour later, Mr. Norman arrived, but he didn't come by himself. 2 other people stepped out of his car. Rachel, Kevin, he said, introducing them. This is Detective Anna Santos from the State Police Fraud Division. And this is FBI Agent Lucas Rivers from the White Collar Crime Unit. Kevin blinked in surprise. FBI? Detective Santos nodded. Cooper doesn't know it yet, she explained, but he's been under federal investigation for the past 18 months. We've been building a case based on complaints from 7 different families whose businesses he destroyed. The problem, she continued, is that most of his victims were either too embarrassed or too financially devastated to pursue prosecution. Agent Rivers crossed his arms. Cooper is very careful about covering his tracks. He's also very good at discrediting anyone who tries to expose him. But now, he added, he's making a mistake. Mr. Norman nodded. By threatening Rachel and attempting to extort consulting fees from her, he's just given law enforcement the leverage they needed. In other words, Detective Santos said calmly, today might finally be the day we arrest Roger Cooper. At exactly 2 p.m. Roger Cooper knocked on our front door. I opened it slowly. The man standing on the porch looked nothing like the criminal mastermind I had imagined. Cooper was shorter than average, probably in his mid-50s. His thinning hair was carefully combed, and he wore an expensive suit that tried and failed to project confidence, but his eyes gave him away. Behind the forced smile was desperation. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I realized something. Roger Cooper didn't know it yet, but today was the day his game finally ended. Miss Ellison, Cooper said with practiced charm, thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Come in, I replied. There are some people I'd like you to meet. The look on Cooper's face when he saw Detective Santos and Agent Rivers sitting in the living room was worth every second of anxiety I'd felt about this meeting. Agent Rivers stood and calmly displayed his badge. Roger Cooper, he said, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and extortion. Detective Santos stepped forward and secured the handcuffs. As they clicked shut around Cooper's wrists, his calm faciade collapsed. He looked straight at me with undisguised hatred. This isn't over, he snarled. You have no idea what you're getting into with that mining deal. Those companies will eat you alive. Maybe, I said calmly, but at least they're not criminals. The officers escorted him outside. Moments later, the police car disappeared down our driveway with Roger Cooper sitting in the back seat. For the first time in weeks, the house felt quiet. Kevin turned to me with something that looked almost like awe. Rachel, how did you know to call the FBI? I didn't, I admitted. But Dad's letter mentioned that Mr. Norman had instructions to contact them if Cooper ever tried to approach our family again. I figured it was worth a phone call. Kevin shook his head slowly. You set him up. No, I corrected gently. I just gave him enough rope to hang himself. There's a difference. But even as relief washed over me, I knew this was only the beginning. In 2 days, representatives from Hillside Crest Mining would arrive to begin serious negotiations over the mineral rights. And unlike Roger Cooper, they were legitimate professionals who expected me to know exactly what I was doing. 2 days later, the Hillside Crest representatives arrived Thursday morning in a convoy that looked like a presidential visit. 3 black SUVs rolled slowly down our driveway. 7 people stepped out, all wearing expensive suits and carrying enough briefcases to stock a law firm. I met them in Dad's study. Before they arrived, I'd removed the family photos and personal mementos from the room. I didn't want anything that might make me appear emotional or inexperienced. Kevin sat beside me, taking notes. Every once in a while, he asked a technical question just enough to show that we weren't completely out of our depth. Miss Ellison, said Dr. Aubrey Wilford, Hillside Crest's lead negotiator, we're very excited about the potential of your property. Our geological surveys indicate mineral deposits that could be extremely valuable for both parties. She spread several charts and technical reports across the table. They looked like something out of a graduate-level science textbook. However, Dr. Wilford continued, I want to be completely transparent about the challenges involved. Mineral extraction is a complex, long-term undertaking with significant environmental and logistical considerations. This wasn't the high-pressure sales pitch I had expected. Instead, she was carefully explaining the potential problems. Our initial offer of $75 million, she continued, is based on current market conditions and estimated extraction costs. But those numbers could change significantly depending on factors beyond our control. Environmental regulations, market fluctuations, extraction difficulties, or shifts in demand for rare earth minerals. Kevin leaned forward. Are you trying to talk us out of selling to you? Dr. Wilford smiled slightly. Actually, she said, we're trying to make sure you fully understand what you're agreeing to. Hillside Crest has been burned before by property owners who had unrealistic expectations about mining operations. We find that honest communication up front prevents expensive legal disputes later, Dr. Wilford said. Then she handed me a document that was much thicker than I had expected. This is our complete offer, she explained, including all terms and conditions. I strongly recommend you have it reviewed by attorneys who specialize in mineral rights law, not just general practice lawyers. I spent the next hour asking the questions Mr. Norman had helped me prepare. Dr. Wilford answered each one patiently. She never seemed impatient, never condescending. Finally, she leaned back slightly. Miss Ellison, she said, may I ask something? Of course. Why are you considering selling the rights outright instead of negotiating a lease agreement with royalty payments? It was a fair question, one Kevin and I had discussed extensively. My father spent 15 years managing a lease agreement, I explained. It provided steady income, but it also required constant attention and expertise. I'm not sure I can manage that long-term. Dr. Wilford nodded. That's a fair concern. Lease management can be complicated, but I want to make sure you've considered every option. She reached into her folder and pulled out another document. This one was a detailed analysis of several financial structures. A straight purchase, she explained, gives you immediate cash but no long-term income. A lease with royalties provides less upfront money, but potentially much higher total returns over time. She paused before sliding the final page across the table. And then there's the hybrid option. Partial purchase with reduced royalties. It provides significant upfront cash while still giving you long-term income security. $40 million upfront plus royalties that could reach another $30 to $50 million over the next 25 years. I stared at the spreadsheet. But what if the rare earth market crashes? What if environmental regulations shut down the operation? I glanced at Kevin. He shrugged. It's your decision, Rachel. Dad left this to you for a reason. Later that evening, after the Hillside Crest team left, Kevin and I sat at the kitchen table going through the numbers again. The hybrid option makes the most sense to me, Kevin said. $40 million upfront plus royalties that could reach another $30 to $50 million over the next 25 years. I stared at the spreadsheet. But what if the rare earth market crashes? What if environmental regulations shut down the operation? What if Hillside Crest goes bankrupt? Kevin sighed. What if you get hit by lightning? He said. Rachel, you can't make decisions based on every possible disaster. Sometimes you have to trust that things will work out. It was good advice, but I wasn't ready to make a $70 million decision after 2 days of thinking. I need more time, I said. How much more? Doctor. Wilford said I could take up to 60 days. I want to use at least some of that time to fully understand what I'm choosing between. Kevin nodded slowly. That's smart. Then his expression changed. But Rachel, while you're thinking about the deal, there's something else we need to talk about. He pulled out a folder I hadn't seen before. I've been researching Cooper's background, he said quietly, trying to understand how I got fooled so completely. His voice carried a hint of shame. What I found is that Cooper didn't target me randomly. He specifically researches families with aging parents who own valuable assets. He handed me a newspaper clipping. This family lived in Ohio, Kevin explained. They owned a trucking company worth about $3 million. When the father got sick, Cooper approached the son with consulting services and expansion ideas. Kevin paused. Within 18 months, the business was bankrupt and the family lost everything. I read through the article slowly and felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Final chapter: the legacy my father left us. Kevin and I sat at the kitchen table long after the Ohio article lay forgotten between us. The realization settled slowly over both of us.